You are listening to the Empowered Business Podcast. I'm your host, Monica Froese, a mom of two and your secret weapon to creating a six-figure digital product business. I'm on a mission to help 1,000 women make $100,000 a year. That's right, $100 million towards financial independence for women. As an online business expert, I am teaching you everything I know right here week after week, so you can join us on the journey to $100 million. Sound good? Then let's jump in. Have you heard the term virtual assistant, online business manager, operations assistant, director of operations, chief of staff? I don't know about you, but when I started my business, even though I have a corporate background, I really did not understand what my org chart should look like in terms of hiring people. And before I really had money to hire someone on payroll, I had no idea how to hire a freelancer to get the right support that I needed in my business. And that is when my good friend Natalie came in and connected me with Teresa, who you heard in a previous episode. She was my very first operations manager. She worked on a contracting basis with me, but she is who I credit with getting me to actually start hiring employees, which completely changed the trajectory of my business. So today I want to talk to Natalie, and Natalie is the founder of the Ops Authority, where she certifies and mentors women who leverage their natural skill set of operations and administration. She's driven to help women earn an income with ease while doing what comes most naturally to them. She spent 15 years in corporate operations and leadership. Her professional life has been built around human resources, project management, process development, and people leadership. Natalie ended her corporate career as the chief of staff for a Fortune 150 CEO. With legacy being her driver, Natalie left corporate America in search of balance and matched her leadership and operational skills to create her own business. Natalie has scaled dozens of online businesses to 7 and 8 figures, working alongside industry icons and developed diverse teams. She merged her corporate career with her entrepreneurial learnings to create the Director of Operations Certification Program, the only strategic operations certification for leaders. And let me tell you, she has had some amazing people come out of this program, and Natalie's journey is super interesting. I've known her for a very long time, and I learned some new things talking to her in this episode. So I really think you'll enjoy this episode, especially if you need help in your business and you just don't know where to look. So let's dive right in. Natalie, welcome to the Empowered Business Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Miss Monica. I'm super excited to be here.
I'm super excited to talk to you. You're one of my favorite humans to talk to, so it's going to be great. I like to start every interview with asking about your entrepreneurial journey. Why are you an entrepreneur? How'd you get started? And more importantly, what are you doing today?
Oh my goodness, this is all the good stuff. And I hope it don't take too long.
You can take as long as you need. Tell us it all.
Fantastic. Well, my journey started, I did the traditional, I went to college, got several degrees, went back and got a master's degree. That could start the conversation with highly ambitious, high achiever. I really enjoy learning. And so there it begins. And I went that traditional, quote unquote, traditional path of going through the university and college system. And then as luck would have it, and by the way, at that point, I was studying nursing, kinesiology, and business. That's where my background is. So definitely come from a place of service, really loved the healthcare space. I saw myself at this point going into hospital administration, leveraging more of the managerial part of it. But on my path to get there, I was a nurse. And so I did that for a little bit.
I did not know that. I had no idea. I knew about your corporate experience, but I did not know you were a nurse.
Yeah, sure am. Yep, sure was, by the way.
How long were you a nurse for?
6 years.
Wow. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. So my husband was on his journey and he was getting his master's degree and his PhD. And so we had traveled all over the country for his education and mine. And then when he had finished up, he got a job offer in San Diego and San Antonio, Texas for the exact same dollar amount. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out which path we took. We have now been in San Antonio for over 20 years, but that brought us here. And when we came back to Texas, just the Minutia, which probably is not entertaining to the person listening to this today, but Medicare rules the nursing system here or the healthcare system in the US. And we arrived in Texas. Every single state has a different expectations and regulations from a Medicare perspective. And so when I came here, all those degrees were like flattened. And so I had just come off of a $65,000 master's degree, which we completely funded ourselves, in debt, of course. So when we got back here, what I was getting paid in Colorado was going to be almost half in Texas. And the field that we were working in, because they didn't use a nurse to do this. They used more of like a technician to do what I had just gotten a master's degree for. So I went to work with like, man, I'm going to have to figure out I started asking myself at that point, what are your natural skills? Like, what can you do? Because this isn't going to cut the cookie. Like we we now had $180,000 in debt and just my college debt. So, yeah, that's not an easy pill. And if you start working the math, it's not going to work out earning $20 an hour. So anyway, started thinking I'm in the 8th largest city in the country. I know I'm a great leader. I know that I can learn anything. I will figure this out. Started thinking, I guess I'm going to take the traditional route of going through corporate. So I started applying hundreds of job applications later. I knew as soon as I could get in the door, it was going to be, I would have a much greater chance. But the fact that I was coming from a background that was extremely technical, that was going to be my uphill battle. Ended up going into corporate and worked in corporate for 15 years at a Fortune 150 company. I'll be indebted to Miss Julie Bryan forever for taking a gamble on me and bringing somebody with a nursing background into the world of HR. But I spent my first decade there in human resources and really worked across lots of different HR disciplines. Moved into leadership. And then from there, they plucked me out. I went into project management into that organization. Again, finding my true skill set, my true passions, which, corporate can get a bad, they can have a bad rap sometimes. But when I think through my journey, of course, there's lots of frustrations. But when I think through my journey, I'm like, wow, they at least were able to find the natural gifts that I have. And I always found myself in a position where I was leveraging those. And if I'd have stayed in the nursing field, it would have been a completely different path. So my last 2 years there, I was the chief of staff for our CEO. And that was really the combination. I never stood taller. I never felt more confident about my calling as a human being in the professional environment. And it allowed me to do everything I'm really, really good at, which was leading people. We had 600 people who reported up to me. It was obviously a huge job for a company with almost 40,000 employees. And I just had so much opportunity to learn, perfect, and improve in both strategy and operations. And none of those words would have even made sense when I was looking for this next step in my career, which led me to corporate. And then I had that epiphany moment, which a lot of us can, if you're an entrepreneur and you're listening today, you likely, maybe you did start off as an entrepreneur, but a lot of us make that journey into entrepreneurship and leverage, and it comes off the hills of a corporate experience, or maybe, something else, some other experience for you. But at this point, I had children and they were 9 and 6. We were paying somebody to drive my kids all over the city to different activities in the afternoon because I wanted them to live a life that was better and different than what I had. A great life, don't get me wrong. But when I was growing up, it was a single parent family. We had a lot of monetary and financial, struggles. And so we were able to provide these great things for our kids, but they came at the expense of having someone else basically fill in for the role of mother. And I remember that gal calling me one day, and I was sitting in my office, corner office, executive, making good money, having a lot of autonomy, really doing what I thought was my life's calling. I remember our sitter calling me and being frustrated over something that the daycare, and I was so mad at her. I mean, I was super, super frustrated at her. And then I got off the phone and, I was fuming. It's just like you do when you're mad. And then I just took a deep breath and started thinking, oh my gosh, I'm mad at the person that's literally being me for my kids. This is crazy. I went home that night and I told my husband, who we were both very happy being a dual income family. And I went home that night and I was like, we aren't doing this anymore. This person is not going to be driving our kids around. We're going to figure this out. And of course, we're both like, we're a dual income family. And he's like, Mom is not walking away from corporate right now. now. So that was the bug and the incident, I would say, that just kind of started me thinking about the next version of me, because I felt like it was limiting my ability to be a parent. And I just got super fixated on that moment. And the word, I ended up working with an executive coach to help me in that journey of figuring out what was next for me. But I remember feeling and latching onto the word of legacy. And we all have legacy to give. Every single person has legacy to give, but we get to define it. And I remember working through that very much like counseling, thinking like, oh my goodness, the only legacy that is going to come out of me is through my kids. Like these people that I think I'm so valuable to in corporate, I'm not. Like, quit fooling yourself, Natalie. And as soon as I started working through that, I naturally was detaching from the identity that was everything to me in that corporate space. And as soon as that started unraveling, I got a lot more confidence. My husband and I started having our conversations changed to how do we make this possible? We are both, if you guys know anything about the Colby, we have almost exact Colbys, and I am a slow start, which means I take very, very slow action and methodical, analytical. Like that's the profile behind me. My husband is the same way. So for the two of us to reach, honestly, we can't pick out a couch in 2 years. Like it takes us forever. So you can tell that my journey into entrepreneurship was very, very calculated. But with that, I gave them 90 days, and very, very quickly after that epiphany moment that I had, but gave them 90 days. And there I begin the journey, or at least the possibility of entrepreneurship. I really didn't know what it was going to look like. My very first business that I had started was called the More Mom Movement. And at that point, I was going to save the working women of America. I was going to figure out how to help them kind of balance this. Really, the life coaching, now that I'm in this space and I'm more aware of the types of coaching that are out there, that's what I thought I was going to do. And that was the foray into building a business. And it was like the hardest business ever, Monica. It was short-lived. It was so difficult, but it enlightened me in entrepreneurship. I got to meet amazing people. We had tons of coffee chats. Facebook was very different back then. You and I connected this way,
Yes.
I had the ability and the time to make a lot of connections. And even though I was running, I was in this space because I was trying to stand up the More Mom movement. The more I started to see that as I was connecting organically with these newfound online friends, we were solving the problems. I diverted and reverted back to who I really was, the easiest part of me, which was me and Monica hop on a phone call. She starts talking about the struggles she's having in business and the block she's having. And then the natural operational strategist, all those skills that I was so proud of in those last couple of years in corporate just started to come out. And I really fast tracked in the entrepreneurial space by owning them and not minimizing them. It would have been easy to say, I'll be a virtual assistant and get my feet wet and try to figure this out. And then I'm like, man, I'm a 6-figure executive in a Fortune 150 company. I am not going to do that. So I put all my eggs in a basket and got rid of the More Mom movement. And at the same time, just doubled down on where my skills were, started selling them through organic conversations. And my business, the Ops Authority, has had many renditions and different pivots over time. Been in business for the last 6 years. So of course that has come with lots of different offers and services and even avatars over that time frame. But that's a little bit or a lot of it of my background and how we got here.
I feel like I could take this so many directions. I'm trying to think of where I want to go with this because I have questions. I remember the More Mom movement, right? Mm-hmm. I remember that. I think I'm still in the Facebook group. It still exists. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm still in it, which in a lot of ways, I think was very similar to how I started Redefining Mom. Different catalysts, like your kids were already functioning and mine had just been born, babies, and mine came out of a need for postpartum. But it's interesting because, so I still function. I think you do too. You work very corporate type hours still on your terms, but you keep pretty regular hours.
Yes.
And I think that there's this thing in the online space when moms particularly get started that they think it's going to be this like fluid thing where your kids are going to be around you yelling and you're going to be like so successful at the same time. And personally, I think I had a brief period where I thought that too. And I quickly realized that wasn't going to happen. I honestly don't even know if that's possible. I guess there could be exceptions to the rule. But what I find what happened for me, and this just came to fruition yesterday. I was thinking through this. I was looking at my calendar and I realized, oh, my daughter has an orthodontist appointment and it's right after school. So, I'm just going to go pick her up from school. She wasn't expecting me because usually my nanny picks her up. I'm going to go pick her up. And then we ended up getting our nails done together. We did all this stuff together. And I thought, now this was the point of why I wanted out of corporate, much to what you were saying, someone else is driving your kids around all the time, but it's always on my terms. Like I don't have to be the one to pick her up from school, but when she needs me to, or when I want to, I have a lot of Fridays that I just shut down because I'm just done. I'm fried. And I'm like, I'm going to go get her from school and we're going to go hang out and we get ice cream, or she gets ice cream. I don't get ice cream anymore, but I don't know. It's just really weird because I feel like we wanted to like help all these other working moms to live life on their own terms, I guess.
Yes.
Maybe you can sum it up. But that's like a really tall order to take on. And it's like, where do you even start with that? And so instead, I feel like for both of us, our journey kind of lent itself to our strengths came out, and then we built businesses around our strengths, still with the core function of wanting to impact.
Yes. Yes. And I'm not going to say that any of these are like easy, but when you are building a business based off of your skills, if it can combine with your passion and your skills, it does become easier. I'm not going to say it's like a cinch, but it is so much easier. I can speak to it. You just think about, messaging, articulating your value, what your promise is going to be. That was very, very gray in my first business because number one, it was new, but the order was so tall, Monica. Like it was, yes. I don't think one person could have solved that.
I have really big ambitions for what I want Redefining Mom to be in the future. Like I can't give up the brand. And I mean, even when we're on video right now, you can actually see the name right behind me. I feel like it can be something, but to be honest, for it to be the impact I want it to be, I needed capital. I wasn't going to go into debt in the business. There's just a lot of things. And I think I needed more experience first before I could take on that kind of level of impact, I guess. And so we keep sidelining it. I have like big plans for 2023, but honestly, it might be 2024. I don't know. It just kind of depends because I feel like I'm in my zone of genius right now as well. So I'm just going to stay in my lane like you're doing. Okay. So here's questions I have about the Ops Authority, because I feel like when I met you, you were doing the more mom movement and you were also working on a contracting basis for other business owners, right? So how long did you contract for before the Ops Authority really became a thing?
Mm-hmm. So when I first started, I'm a perfectionist, and I always say that I'm a perfectionist that doesn't want to be told that you shouldn't be a perfectionist. I'm not going to be recovering because I enjoy being a perfectionist. But when I first started, I shortcutted and my business name was NatalieGingrich.com. And from the very beginning of that, I was definitely selling services, and I was selling project management and team management or people leadership, whatever you want to look at it. So, which those go hand in hand with project management. So that I did that. And then I was doing that from like project to project. And then once I would get into people's businesses, they were like, wow, we have a lot of projects. Can I just keep you on retainer? Now, at this point, Monica, all these are like new terms to me. Like I am like retainer. Sure. What you mean? You're going to pay me on an ongoing basis. And I'm of course going to be delivering on an ongoing basis, but wow, this is like employment again. Like this felt really good and safe for someone who is, risk averse and likes that stability and consistency. So I started working in that capacity in a couple of businesses. And then I really grew quite quickly because what I was offering, the service, the deliverables, I don't want to brag on myself, but I will. It was different than the experience they were having with a lot of the other freelancers. And yes, that's my work ethic. Yes, that's my level of commitment. I also feel like that's the expectation in corporate. And I had just come out of 15 years of you are canned if you don't do what you say you're going to do, period. Yes. And so the ethics of delivering were very important. And the level of excellence is just something that I'm personally driven by. And so when that word got out, it was easy for my clients' friends and friends of friends to refer, completely referral-based business. I served in a one-to-one capacity for 4 years, actually, up until the last 2 years, I was working one-to-one, and sometimes I was taking on additional projects and working in different levels inside of businesses, but I served in a one-to-one capacity for 4 years.
Yeah, I remember. Well, first of all, like your name definitely got around on a referral basis because, and it's so obvious as a corporate girl myself. There's some really funky things in the online world that just kind of make me scratch my head. Namely, one of the things that really threw me early on was this like general advice that general virtual assistants, like very generalist type people, should be charging $50, $60 an hour. And I don't understand that. I think sometimes what we hear in online business, they miss the economic concept of supply and demand. And so there's like a whole lot of supply coming from these very general charge a lot VAs. And the demand isn't there because anyone who's going to be successful in business, like I would consider myself successful in business. I think you would as well. I know the difference between what I'm paying, like someone who's delivering to the caliber I want them to, and somebody who has no idea what they're doing.
Yes.
And I think I remember talking to you about this whole, what's a virtual assistant versus an online business manager versus what you teach people to be, which is a director of operations. I remember having that conversation because I didn't know what I needed, but I knew I was dealing with constantly cycling through people who could not operate at the caliber that I expected. And they were charging outrageous rates for the type of delivery, essentially. So like, okay, can you first tell us the difference between those three things and then how you ended up training director of operations? And because I hired one of yours and she changed my business. So
awesome. Yes. So think of a pyramid that's got 4 different levels. The bottom is implementation. The next is management. On top of management is strategy. And at the very tip top is vision. So those are the 4 functions that you see and you will need in your business. Now, if you are looking for implementation only, that's where you're going to find your virtual assistants. When you start to overlay the implementation with a little bit of management, now you're bringing in more of a specialist who's got that skill set in project and people, maybe even marketing. It could be any discipline. You're starting to want or need more oversight. So maybe you as the CEO and the leader of your business aren't having to show up in that capacity as much. This is the progression of how we get, how we build our teams. Really, it's how we structure and how we help people to build their teams. And then on top of that management layer, you have strategy. And this is about the capacity in which small business really stops. Most people don't need a visionary in the operations space because we're trying to cut margins and be as efficient and lean as possible. But we can have a whole other conversation on that. So when you think of implementation, you're more of your operational assistant or your virtual assistant, definitely entry level. The next, you're going to find your operations coordinators or managers where they have more autonomy. They also bring more experience. And then your strategist. Well, strategists are what we call directors of operations. And at that point, you're combining strategy. So you're able to take the vision from the leader that has all the ideas, who doesn't know how to prioritize them and wants them all done yesterday. We are the counterpart. Directors of operations are the counterpart that comes in, takes those big ideas, creates a strategic plan, prioritizes those, and truly serves as a strategic partner to the business. I like to say that a director of operations is a yes, maybe person and not a yes, ma'am. That yes, ma'am is the person that sits more at that entry level, that implementation layer where it's like, you know what, I need this Zap put together. I need this done. I need that. And they just continuously, yes.
Like
ma'am.
A checklist. They do the checklist.
Yes. And they're fantastic at it. And we need them in our business. So I'm certainly not minimizing them. They're critical in our business. And for most of us, it's the first layer that we are going to outsource to somebody. But any of those layers that are not covered, the leader is typically holding on to those, right? So as leaders, as we grow and as our businesses evolve, we're stripping apart that triangle that I just shared with you verbally. We're pulling that away so that we can continuously get closer to owning the vision and having people around us to fill in where our gaps are or what we want to get rid of. And so the director of operations sits at the strategic level. And you're going to find like your business managers are oftentimes in that managerial space as well. All 3 of them are very critical. The reality is one person can cover two layers of this. But when we start thinking that we're going to, and we see this misrepresented in the online space quite a bit, talking about a unicorn, right? Where that unicorn is the person that covers all four layers. And friends, that never works. You may think you have your unicorn, but what really happens is burnout, exhaustion, overwhelm. Those people end up turning over in your business. Those are the people that ghost you. So as business leaders and owners, we have to be really clear on what it is that you want, because the part that's not being covered is the part that you actually own as the leader. So directors of operations come in as a strategic partner to help integrate that vision that you have. And we work with the team, we work with the tools, we work with the projects to make sure that you continuously move forward towards your vision. So I was doing this after the project management experience and offer that I had initially. And I started to work on a more recurring basis and more on a retainer basis inside of these businesses. I started to see myself as kind of the same way I left corporate, as that chief of staff. And chief of staff, just the title alone doesn't make sense in a small business. And there's a lot of beliefs I have around this that can be unpopular. But what I did was translate that holistic operational view, which is where my gifts were, which is where my experience came from out of corporate. And I put that into small business. I figured out and rewired how to deliver what was so valuable in corporate to the small business. And when we did that, we came up with the title Director of Operations, which is obviously not unique to me, but that's how we really got our foothold inside of the market that we're serving today.
I think I hired from your first cohort from the program, because
Yeah.
it's a certification program, correct?
Yes. So I started doing this, Monica, myself. And then at that point, of course, different time and day in business and in the cycle, in the economy. And it was pre-pandemic. So I was speaking almost once a month, maybe even twice a month in different masterminds on different stages. And as visibility and exposure go, I would hop off the stage talking about what a director of operations does. And all of the peers, all of the participants, all of, the students would be there and saying, I need a Natalie. And I'm thinking, wow, this is cool. Like, this is fantastic, but I'm booked out. Mm-hmm. So what do I do? Now I'm like firing clients early. Like I wasn't doing that. I was thinking through this, like, how can I do this? And again, very, very slow action taker, very methodical. I was like, you know what? I've got this army of people around me, people that I have good, honest, hardworking people that share the same values. I believe that they have the skills. So you know what, Monica, if you're looking for a director of operations, I'm going to tell you that my friend Sally would be great for you. Well, Sally comes and works for you, and you call me because we're friends. You call me up and you're like, Sally just ghosted me, or Sally did me wrong, or Sally, you said she was great at HR. She knows nothing. And I, as an Enneagram 2, felt terrible about making that recommendation, right? So I was starting to doubt myself. And then I now put myself into a place where I'm like, oh, I guess I need to go work for Monica and help her do this because that's her need. And I know I have the solution, a lot of crazy like mental stuff going on for me. And then one day I remember waking up and saying, I can actually qualify people. I can put them through a training program where I can share what makes me unique, what makes me high functioning, which makes me, which keeps me employed with these people. I've worked for some of these people for 4 straight years. Like I was doing something right, because all my peers were cycling through people every 3 months, 6 months. No one was staying for a year. And I had several clients that I served for multiple years. And so I thought, well, I'll create a training program where I can download what's working, the processes I'm using, the systems. I mean, that's part of my gift is that piece. And so I'll put that into training materials. And then it wasn't okay enough. We both have a really high standard of delivery and expectation for ourselves. And so, at that point, this is now 3 years ago. And at that point, courses were the big thing. That was the main method of delivery. And I thought, I can put this into a course. And then I went to work a little bit deeper and I was like, wait, I want to make sure when I'm sending my people to Monica that they actually it can't be a passive product. This has to be something where I'm involved, where, and I could see it getting bigger and bigger, but that is where we shifted the mentality from more of a course to maybe a group program. And then we landed in the certification, We've now certified over 200 people, and it's obviously been a massive gift for us to be able to help women. Our focus has changed now from, getting and equipping directors of operations. If you take that one level higher, now it's serving the female professional economy to leverage the skills that they already have so that more businesses can actually scale. Because most visionaries are incapable of scaling a business through people. They're going to scale a business through more products, more offers, and all of that, which is fine, but someone has to manage the back end of that. And so, we are so on fire to just see this movement. It turned from really like a skill-based thing more into a movement where the impact is so much more powerful than where it started. And where it started was still very impactful.
I did not realize that you had certified 200 people. That is a lot of people that are going to change a lot of businesses. So is that what you do now? Do you even have clients anymore?
No.
I didn't
for the last
think so.
2 years. So I had that very typical moment where I was serving multiple audiences and the marketing was getting confusing. I had people signing up for a group program that thought that they were coming in for the certification. That happened 2 times. And I slapped myself around, and I'm risk averse. I'm very, very scared to go all in. Very calculated risk. And so I remember thinking, okay, if this has happened twice, this is a problem. And we all know that multiple avatars is not scalable or sustainable. And so I had a very, very strong moment in talking with a mentor and a friend of mine and said, it's time. It's time. You've already tested, you've vetted this. Just trust yourself. And the great thing at this point, I was, 4 years into business. She's like, if everything goes wrong, what's the worst thing that can happen? You know how to build businesses. Like, this is what you do. You need to take your own advice. And so I really ripped the Band-Aid off and just went directly into growing that director of operations certification program. And that's where we are.
And the people who go through the program, are they mainly working on a contracting basis with people, or do they actually go into full-time roles?
Monica, it's shifting right now. So until the pandemic, we saw a lot of freelancers. And by the way, 70% of our students come through wanting to build their own business. We have 30% that are employer sponsored. So if you have a full-time or even a part-time person that works in your business at that level and you want them to gain more skills or you want them to have the certification, those people still come. We have 2 different tracks. And so that is out there. We're just about to record a podcast on this as well, but we are seeing the industry kind of change a little bit. And I think that it's a product of the market. I also think that there is a quality of service that people are demanding and expecting. And I also think and know that there is a way to merge why you and I were so called to start these businesses, which is on the search for freedom, for allowing women to become greater, more, and still extremely valued, to still do that inside of a full-time commitment. And that is not what I thought of when I was leaving corporate. So I really think that the market is shifting a little bit. I'm not going to say that, freelancing is going to go away. I do not believe that. I think that that's always going to be a possibility out there. And I love that for so many people. On the flip side, I also think that the market, the employers out there are starting to see the value of really hiring for values, getting people in who you truly understand. They want to be moms. They want to be wives. They want to have robust and full lives and still be highly professional, high level of service still given to you. I don't think it's an either or. And 6 years ago, it felt like an either or. Today, it's starting to feel like we have a choice.
I absolutely agree with you. I agree that I feel like that's how I see the trend going. So here's the thing. I would not be where I am if I hadn't taken the leap to have full-time employees, which was a product of, so I hired Teresa, she's a couple episodes before you, this is airing, as my first director of operations. Because she went through your program, you recommended her. I was completely overwhelmed. And she basically changed my life because she had me hire employees, which was the catalyst for everything. And what I recognize as an employer, both my full-time employees right now have small children. And when I connect back to the mission of why I started this to begin with, I am not going to treat them like I was treated in corporate. But here's the thing, because I knew all along I was capable of the high level of excellence I put out in corporate, but I felt very controlled. And I felt like control is for people who need to be micromanaged. And that wasn't me. I got my work done and I was good at it. Mm-hmm. And those are the type of women I want to work with. So I want to give them the balance of you don't have to always take on the risk of being an entrepreneur, but you can still, I would never, ever tell any of them to, your deadline at work comes before your sick child or your child who needs you or anything like that. And I'm very, very much about outcomes. So it's very apparent if you're not getting your work done. We're going to have a conversation if you're not. But honestly, I don't need to know where you are every second of the day. If we have a live call and you're supposed to be on it and you don't show up, there's going to be a problem. Like that's part of your responsibility. But if your kid has a half day, I catch myself saying all the time, I'm not going to put in for time off for this. Like they'll work a half a day because of whatever circumstance happened. I'm like, I'm not going to dock you time because you still got your work done and you went over and above to make sure that I wasn't put out for it. And so I don't know, there's this I want more of that. I'd love to see, because not everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. Not everyone's cut out to be an entrepreneur.
But we get to lead that. What I feel on the business ownership side and on the CEO side, as I am in masterminds, as I am with, my peers, I'm always like, I learned so much from corporate and I already gave it the shout out that it deserves. We also were burned that control, that, high achieving or not being recognized or being marginal, like all those things definitely happened. And as I build this business, I get to build it knowing, having had all of those experiences, I get to build this differently. We launch every couple months and obviously that's a big effort inside of our business. And I always tell them, like, we don't work nights and weekends, even though, they've been freelancers. They've also worked in other businesses and in other corporations. And so they feel like, the launch is coming up. I'm going to be, don't worry, Nat, I'm going to be available all weekend long. No, nothing happens here that is that important. Like we are changing lives and we can do it on Monday morning at 10 o'clock in the morning. We do not need to do it on Saturday night at 6 p.m. That is download time. It is happy hour time. It is be with your family time, but it is not Natalie Gingrich time. Like you need to, but when we show that, like every time I say something like this, they're like, are you sure? I'm like, oh, those are wounds. Like those are wounds that are coming out of something and of a poor experience. And it doesn't have to be like that. And I think that the more of us that are kind of leading this and showing this, it's how we continue to attract really great people into our business too.
Yeah. Because there's different, small business I don't offer the type of benefits I had at my Fortune 100 company, but there are a lot of other ways that you can make up for it. And I feel like, we talk a lot about making an impact on our students and helping the people we teach, like with your certification and stuff. And through my programs, I definitely feel like I make an impact there. But I've started to realize over the last year that one of the biggest impacts I can make are on the people around me and the people that I employ and making their lives better. It's almost like, and even I have a full-time nanny too, and I pay her fairly, of course, and I pay her legally as well. Not a lot of people do that. I've come to learn, but it's like, that's part of the impact that we're having, and I don't know. I think that your certification program has changed a lot of lives. I mean, I know it changed mine.
Thank you. That really is a nice unintended consequence and blessing, the opposite of consequence. It's been a surprise. Like that's not why we started this. I really wanted to get operations and have business owners understand what operations is. And as a byproduct, we've been able to empower so many women to look at their God-given skills, to be able to leverage those, monetize those, and serve people. And all of my people are high servants. Like they want to come in and they really want to solve your problem and they want to do it as uninvasive as possible. And that's their gift. And it's a unique gift. It's a gift that they have probably not even thought of as a gift for so long, or forever, probably. And I think we don't have to go deep into the whole female thing, but, a lot of us have been told to be valued, you have to have a degree. To be valued, you have to have this kind of background. To be valued, you need to do X, Y, and Z. And I think we're at a place where luckily we get to rewrite that. And we have a lot of freedom to write that and to help other people see that. And I'm holding on to that big time.
Yeah. And think about what you just said is basically what you started the more mom movement to do, but you ended up just doing it by showing up with the skills that you're great at. So
yeah, it's not lost on me for sure.
Yeah, no, I think it's amazing. Okay. So if people want to learn more about you, I know you have a podcast and the certification. How do we find you?
Yep. So the podcast is The Ops Authority, and we publish every single week lots of information on operators. So if you're listening and you are an operator, it'd be a great place for you to go. If you're listening and you're the business owner and you've got somebody in your business who is functioning as an operator at any of the levels that we talked about today, it'll be fantastic tactical advice for them to be able to make an impact in your business. But you can also visit us we're primarily active on Facebook, and our website is The Ops Authority as well.
Awesome. And of course, we'll link to all of this for you. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing your journey. I really appreciate it.
Yes. Thanks, Monica.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Empowered Business Podcast. If you want to get started creating your own digital products and don't know where to start, we have a brand new training that can help. It's called Passion to Profit: How to Discover Your Unique $1 Million Digital Product Formula. Head on over to empoweredbusiness.co/profit to join the training for free. Plus, we've added on a private podcast feed to make consuming the content even easier. You can choose to consume it via video or a private podcast feed. I can't wait to see you back here next week.